Ben, good afternoon. Thanks very much, and thanks to everybody who's joining us. It's great to be back at Host City again from a snowy Edinburgh. It's just started snowing here. From looking at the locations of everybody that's been joining from this morning, the comments, etc., it's been an early start for some, later in the evening for others, but just after midday here in Scotland. So look, let's get going. For this session, we're going to talk about the importance of partnerships in hosting major events. Now, working together has always been a critical factor in the successful delivery of any event, particularly at an organisational level, an operational level, and a delivery level between organisers, organising committees, contractors, broadcasters, teams, athletes, technical production, security, catering, transport, etc. But in many ways, these are very much transactional relationships. And historically, the relationship between an event or a rights owner has been predominantly transactional. You bid to host my event, you pay me a fee, and then you deliver the event to a specification which I give you. However, I guess in recent years, we've definitely seen a shift in approach from both rights owners and hosting organisations to get towards a more collaborative approach, one of co-creation to one where the experience, the culture, and the unique attributes which each party brings can instead deliver a transformational partnership which benefits all parties, including, of course, a better overall experience for our spectator, our audience, or our customer. So look, this afternoon, I'm delighted we've got three fantastic individuals whose insights into partnerships and events delivery are going to be invaluable. So if they're going to join me on screen, they are Trudy Lindblade, who's the CEO of the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships, Peter Duthie, who's the CEO of Scottish Events Campus, and Martin Green, who's the Chief Creative Officer of the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games, we just heard from Katie, and also Unboxed, which he'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. So with the just under 30 minutes or so that we've got, I'm going to invite each of our panelists just to speak for maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes or so about their individual perspective on the concept of event hosting and partnerships. And then I've got a number of questions for them, but obviously it'd be great to hear questions from those of you that are joining us from wherever you are. Please put any questions in the comments box. And I've got an iPad here, keeping an eye on them, and I'll try and introduce them when I can. So first of all, I'm going to move to Trudy. Trudy's the Chief Executive of, as I said, 2023 Cycling World Championships. Joined the organisation in October 2020, having relocated from Melbourne. So she's had the unenviable task of building a new team for a new event, all on Teams, which we've all been dealing with over the last couple of years or so. Trudy, maybe you want to start by explaining what the Cycling World Championships is and tell us a little bit about the partnership approach you've adopted with the UCI.
Great. Thanks very much, Robbie. And I'm very excited and pleased to be here with you all today and to talk to you about this new event on the major events calendar, the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships. The championships are an example of co-creation. We're working very closely with the UCI, who are the event owner, Scottish Government, Glasgow City Council, UK Sport and British Cycling to be creating essentially the biggest cycling event in history. It will bring together 13 World Championship events into one event over 10 days for the very first time. The aggregation of 13 World Championships into one mega event provides us an opportunity to create an event of size and scale. To that end, we're hoping in Glasgow and across Scotland that will welcome over 1 million spectators across the 10 days and a TV audience of significant size and scale. Cumulatively, if we can get to 1 billion, that is our goal and our reach. And we want to inspire people around the world to not just be the next world champion, but to very simply ride bikes more often. At the heart of what we're planning is an incredible inaugural edition of the Cycling World Championships. We're doing that in hand. It will be held hand in hand with the UCI. It will be held in Glasgow and across Scotland. And what we're planning to do is create a blueprint for the future. This event will be held every 4 years in the year preceding the Olympic Games. It will be an international showcase of the world's best cyclists in our venues, in our world-class venues across Scotland. and with a fair and authentic playing field where the results are determined by the athlete's performance, cheered on by fans in sold-out venues, lining the roads and the streets, or watching from around the globe. In terms of the numbers, in terms of size and scale, we'll host over 8,000 athletes, and that will be a mixture of both amateur and elite athletes. So we'll have over 2,500 elite, able-bodied and para-athletes, with a further 5,500 amateur athletes, all competing for World Championships glory. Bringing 13 World Championships together showcases the depth and breadth of the sport of cycling. So this event will feature the fast pace of the road and the track, the thrills and spills of BMX freestyle, trials and flatland, and the beauty of artistic cycling and the amazing bike control of cycleball. So there's a few events there that some of you may not have necessarily known that were part of the UCI and part of the World Championship, range of World Championship events. We'll also be out in the mountains with mountain bike, downhill and cross country. So the depth and breadth of the events that people will see over the 10 days is certainly going to be exciting. But it's not just about the World Championships. The World Championships, we need to provide the stage and we need to provide everything that goes with that to enable our athletes to perform at their best and for the spectators to have the best possible experience. But it's more than that for us and our partners. It's about the power of the bike, and that is our vision. Our vision is that everybody should be able to experience the freedom of riding a bike and what it can bring to our everyday lives. The humble bike has a significant role to play in long-lasting behavioural change, and we've put policy at the very forefront of what we're doing. We've started at it from the beginning. In the creation of our organisation, we have a senior member of our leadership team that heads up our policy and impact space, and we're leading with it from the forefront. We can't do this ourselves, though. It is definitely a partnership approach. We can't do that without the Scottish Government, with Glasgow City Council and Glasgow Life and UK Sport and British Cycling, and a number of other agencies that we are working with to help deliver this event. So, as we all know, sport is an enabler. It's an enabler for bigger conversations to be had. So again, it's not just about the delivery of the event. It's about how do we talk to new audiences? How do we get more people engaged with cycling? And how do we do things a little bit differently? You heard John Dutton talk earlier about some of the areas they're focusing on. Some of ours are quite similar. We've got 3 key themes that we'll be focusing on over the next 18 months or a bit more. People, place and planet. People is really important to us because we need to take cycling into new audiences. And by the aggregation of these events, we're able to do that. And again, using a partnership approach, it enables us to explore new audiences. From a place perspective, Scotland is an incredible tourism destination, and we want to make it a bucket list destination for cycling. So we'll be showcasing everything Scotland has to offer. From a planet perspective, I spoke about the humble bike. It can be more than just something that you can win gold medals on. It is also something that you can use in your everyday life, be it for active travel, for your mental health, for cycle tourism, for going out with your kids on the weekend. There is so much more it can do. So we're facing a climate crisis, and the bike can play a crucial role in that. The championships will help encourage people to make positive commitments to clean air powered by pedals. We're finalising our sustainability ambitions, and we don't have all the answers today, but we will be announcing these over the coming weeks and months, and we'll be working with a range of government agencies. We'll also be talking to other major events. What are they doing? What can we learn from them to make sure that we can all contribute to a more sustainable future? So we are doing things a little bit differently, Robbie. We are creating something from scratch. It's never been done before. It does give us the opportunity to do things differently, to innovate, and to work with our partners to test what has gone before us. So we're very much looking forward to doing that over the next 18 months.
Great, Trudy. Thanks very much for that Fascinating insight into the Cycling World Champs in 2023. Moving next to Peter Duthie. Peter was appointed as Chief Executive of the SEC, Scottish Events Campus, in 2014, having been there since 1984. I didn't realise it was quite that long, Peter. The award-winning SEC is one of Europe's most successful event venues, incorporating the SEC Centre itself, the Armadillo and the Oval Hydro, which is one of the busiest live entertainment venues in the world. And he's also chair of the Event Industry Advisory Group in Scotland, which has provided representation for the event sector to the Scottish Government during the pandemic. Peter, you've, despite events not having really taken place much in the last 20 months, you've been a pretty busy man.
Yes, thanks, Robbie, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. And also, thanks, Trudy. I'm looking forward to cycling next year, and apparently I'm getting a new bike for Christmas, so it's all good. We have been busy, as Robbie alluded to. In many senses, it's hard to sum up the last couple of years in 5 minutes, but I'll try and pick out a few key points for what we've been going through, focusing on the partnership issues involved. We've benefited greatly over the piece from our general approach to business over the years, which has been very much partnership based. We deal with a lot of regular clients, and the relationships we've built have been really strong, and were hugely important when the venue shut down, and all our venues shut down on the campus when the pandemic struck. In terms of dealing with cancellations, rescheduling, and client management generally. And taking the view that we weren't going to exploit a contractual position, understanding that we could all benefit for the future by understanding each other's issues and challenges, and working together as we move through it. We fairly quickly then moved into being approached by the Scottish Government to accommodate the temporary hospital facility on the site, the NHS Louisa Jordan. That was an extraordinary exercise altogether, a very different type of partnership approach to getting a hospital built on our campus within the space of 3 weeks, a complete hospital fully equipped within 3 weeks. Contractors were working together who were normally competitors on the site, lending each other people and equipment just to get the job done. And it was extraordinary what was capable of being achieved through that exercise. We had the hospital here for the best part of for at least a year. And the decommissioning of that was challenging too, because when you build a building that fast, you're not necessarily working out as you build it how you're going to take it apart again. But we've got our venues back and working moving forward. Clearly, a big part of our focus was on hosting COP26, which took place recently in Glasgow. But we had, in order to do that, we had to get our own team reboarded and re-engaged. About a third of our team were involved in supporting the hospital, and about half our staff were furloughed, basically taking time out of the business, and the remaining 20% running the business. So as we brought our team members back on board, I think it was hugely important to have a partnership approach with our own team to understand their issues, the challenges they faced as they re-engaged with the business. Many were looking to have a lifestyle change, and it was hugely important to remain connected with them through the period they weren't working as such. And our comms program was hugely important, and we have now reboarded our full team back into the business. COP26, biggest event staged, I think, in the world since COVID struck. We had to win it in the first place, which we were delighted to do, to bring the event to Glasgow. And that involved, again, partnership approach with our client base, because we had to clear our tenancy diary in order to accommodate the event of that scale, moving other events around within our calendar. And we were able to do that. And then, of course, we had to reschedule it again as the pandemic lasted longer than any of us would have wanted it to. And clearly, we're still working through it. The upside for us was that delivery partnerships for that event, which were hugely important, were already well established in Glasgow and in Scotland generally through the delivery of the likes of the Commonwealth Games and also things like the Ryder Cup. So in terms of security, with the police, with transport, with accommodation, city planning generally, and a good example of that is the Get Ready Glasgow website, which communicated with the local communities as well. really helped the success of that event, and generally the success of events coming into Glasgow, because in essence Glasgow in its connectivity is a small city. The key players know each other and have built up the relationships over the years. Also with COP being UN territory was quite an extraordinary situation, because I guess when we were a hospital, the buildings were no longer under my control. The NHS effectively were ultimately responsible for the buildings, and the same happened with COP when the UN became responsible for our venue. Clearly we were involved in a key role in supporting them through that process, and it was a complex client relationship with the UK government and the UN working together. Challenging because we weren't able to build up the same relationship through the planning period with the UN as we might have done with other organisers, but very quickly that trust was built and the event was delivered successfully. And indeed it was the most successful of the largest COP ever staged, with 38,000 delegates and over 109,000 square metres of space. About 2/3 of that was temporary structures built specifically for the event. But I think what it did demonstrate is clearly, even in a pandemic, there is a real desire for people to meet face to face for those important conversations. And I think for the events industry, that was hugely encouraging. And I think, generally speaking, a sort of one team approach with a production company, Identity, who were responsible for that, allowed us to operate other events through the build-up and breakdown period for COP very successfully. And also deliver the legacy piece that we were looking for our own venues, working with the UN as to, looking for outcomes and outputs. That in itself would be the subject clearly of another conversation altogether, Robbie. But we're now moving towards some form return to sort of normal operation, if you like, and staging events on a regular basis, but clearly still impacted by the effects of the pandemic.
Peter, thanks very much. I think COP itself and the extraordinary work that your team did, as you say, in collaboration with a range of others in the current period, was extraordinary, and that would justify a conversation all on its own. But must give Martin, who's waited patiently here, his opportunity as well. So Martin, thanks for joining us. Martin's the Chief Creative Officer of Birmingham Commonwealth Games 2022 and Unboxed, which is the £120 million festival of creativity and innovation taking place all over the UK in 2022. Previously, Martin has masterminded some of Britain's most significant major events, including the opening of the O2 in London, the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic opening and closing ceremonies, and as CEO and Director of Hull UK Centre of Culture in 2017. Martin delivered 365 days of transformative culture for the city to huge acclaim. Martin, tell us a little bit about juggling sport and culture and arts and Unboxed as we move into 2022.
Thanks, Robbie, and I'm really flattered to be in such an amazing company. So hello, wherever you are in the world today. I'm going to be relatively brief. In a way, on the Commonwealth Games side, the new chief executive of the Commonwealth Games explained really well what's happening in Birmingham and where we are. And the subject of this conversation is partnership, isn't it? And one of the key partnerships, in a way, is I think that the Commonwealth Games, more than any major global sporting event, really leans into its cultural life. Arguably, it has become over the years, and Glasgow demonstrated this better than ever, a sporting and cultural event. And I think there's still a lot more room for sport to lean into its cultural life when it travels the world to do that. Of course, it brings in new audiences, it crosses over audiences from culture to sport, from sport to culture, and breaks it down. Indeed, there's a huge strain of work in our cultural festival for the Games, the Birmingham 22 Festival, which is directly bringing together artists and sport to create new hybrids of work, which is really exciting. At the Games, I look after the opening and closing ceremony, the culture programme, the Queen's Baton Relay, the live sites, the welcome ceremonies, the medal ceremonies, sports presentation, and our learning program, which cross-cuts all of those and more to deliver learning programs to the million young people who are in some form of education across the West Midlands. And just to pick out a couple of examples, really, we talk a lot of partnerships in staging major events in terms of how we interact with our key stakeholders, in our case with the West Midlands Combined Authority, Birmingham City Council, the DCMS and the Commonwealth Games Federation. But actually, excuse me, the partnership with the people of this city is arguably fundamentally more important. This is the youngest and most diverse city in Europe. And we have to and need to and want to and are inspired by interacting with them in order to build the games. Now, we're very lucky that the Commonwealth Games Federation has a looser approach to how it deals with cities than I think other major sporting event organisations that I've certainly worked with. It really allows the games to take on the personality of the city, people of the city. We obviously reflect that back. You know, be it in our opening ceremony, where it was, of course, a no-brainer that the leadership of our opening ceremony would from Birmingham. So Iqbal Khan is the director of that, working with Joshua MD and Maeve Clark as the writer. But also in every other, and the way we recruit, constantly wanting and needing to reflect the city back in, to put it another way, make work events about the world, unless the people making those events don't look like the we live in. The Queen's Baton Relay is obviously well underway. We're in 18 countries in our 71 country and territory tour. Never before has that been an example of partnerships. We realised very quickly that there was no way the traditional model of a team from the host city going around the world with the baton was going to work in a pandemic. So we changed the model. So essentially the baton is passed from country to country, neighbour to neighbour, which in some ways is arguably more poetic, and also certainly cuts down on the amounts of flights that we were intending to take. The interesting takeout from that is that actually the cities and the countries and territories we're going to are really missing us. They really enjoyed the delegation from the host city of the Commonwealth Games going to their place, going to their country, showing them around, using it as a good excuse for stakeholder and partnership events. So it's a classic example of how one thing makes sense on one side, but actually to your audience, to your colleagues, there's actually something fundamentally missing. That said, the Commonwealth, the baton relay is going super well, and there's great imagery coming back from that. Unboxed is a festival of creativity taking place across the UK throughout 2022 that brings together science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. It seeks to say that the future of work and play and skills is creative, but creativity is not the purview of just the arts. It's important that all of those things clash together. Frankly, the kids have been doing this for many years. It's the grown-ups that keep them apart as disciplines in funding and industry and education. So it's a very timely festival of 10 major commissions bringing those disciplines together in really unusual ways. And in many ways, it's the antithesis of the major event. We have consciously moved away from a metropolis-focused single venue approach. The project takes place right across the UK, predominantly in places that too often don't get the choice for high quality imaginative work. And the partnership involved in there started with the 4 countries of the UK agreeing to do the project, which they all did once they saw what the project was seeking to achieve. Alongside the project, again, is a big learning program and a big academic and industry program called the Creative Commons. There was a report a while ago from the Bank of England that said jobs where created the core squad will increase by 30% in the next 10 years. And as well as bringing great imaginative spectacle pieces of work across the UK and through digital to the world throughout 2022, this is one of the things we want to get to grips with, which as far as work and skills go, the way we live, work and play in the future will be highly affected by all of these forms of creativity coming together. I'll stop there because I know we're keen to get to questions.
Martin, thanks very much. Fascinating stuff. I've popped up some of the URLs in the comments for some of the websites, Cycling World Champs, SEC, Birmingham, and Unboxed. If I was going to pick out one, I'd definitely say have a look at the Unboxed 2022. Sorry, Peter, Trudy. But have a look at that, because it really does bring to life and explain some of the ambition and innovation for that unique cultural festival for next year. We've just got 5 minutes or so, so I'm going to pick out just one particular question for each of you, and if I can maybe try and hold you each to a minute or so for your responses. But each of the events that you're working on or have worked on recently, I guess, are owned by another organisation, whether it's a rights holder like the UCI, the UN owning COP, or the Commonwealth Games Federation for the Commonwealth Games. But how do you ensure that that event is shaped, your event is shaped and tweaked to benefit from the specific experience, the culture, the benefits that your host or city or your venue can bring? Trudy, can I come to you first in terms of co-creation with the UCI?
Thanks, Robbie. And I think we have the benefit of something that's never been done before. So co-creation can start from the very inception. So I feel very privileged, as does my team, to be able to be working with the UCI to set the tone and the benchmark for the future for an event that we're hoping is still going in 100 years' time. So for us, it is all about co-creation. And there's a couple of good examples that we've done. And one is with the UCI. We've set up a joint partnership committee, which is to do with our commercial rights. So we've pulled a portion of our commercial rights together so that we can go out together into the market to share the risk and share the reward, and we're that's working really well. The second thing that we're doing is we've got a cycling cabinet established where we're working, which is chaired by the Cabinet Secretary from Scottish Government, and it features all of our principal funding partners and event partners, and that shows the spirit of partnership and how we can set two things. First of all, the benchmark for the future, but also to make sure Scotland and the UK gets what it needs from this event. So that's what we're doing.
Peter, if I could go to you next.
Sure, thanks, Robbie. I think for me, I guess it's about early engagement. I think if you can engage early and communicate well with the rights holder, the organiser, from a venue perspective, then you can build confidence and allow your team's experience to add value to the event that's going to be delivered. I think with COP, we were, in some senses, fortunate there was a reschedule. COP is an unusual event. Because of the scale of it, it's awarded in a very short period of time ahead of delivery. So the planning process is actually quite compressed, but through the rescheduling, we're actually started to build up that relationship with the UK government, with the production companies involved, and build confidence through our team to them. And I think that allowed us to be more agile in terms of delivery, because in the fast changing world that we're all facing now, that confidence allows faster decision making and allows generally a better response to dealing with challenges and issues as they arise through the event.
Thank you, Peter. Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo a lot of that. I think, we're lucky that the Commonwealth Games Federation has an enormously open mind and wants to take on the culture and personality of the place it is in. It unlike other sporting organisations, doesn't walk in with books and books and books of protocol manuals that you have to follow and the temperature of a hotel room, because it accepts that there is, a better conversation to be had. What we have to do in return, first of all, is gain their confidence, build a team where they know that the games will be delivered beautifully, which then allows more things to be laid over the top and more conversations to be had about leeway and changing things and trying something new. And so I think as long as you've got those two things in place, I think it also recognises that you don't sort of have this corporate shield, this corporate filter around these events anymore. The way we consume content, the way we speak to each other, the immediate way that we communicate with our audiences and our participants is much more direct. So in a way, that sort of pomposity of a global sporting event just doesn't actually get traction anymore. And I think it's all for the good, because we've got a much more fluid conversation going on between the owners of a traveling global event and the place in which it is. And so this idea of place really comes through.
Great. I think time is almost against us and probably prevents us from delving further into the other questions that indeed we'd prepared for. But if I can take out, I guess, the two or three things from this early engagement, and I think that the challenges that you've all had to face over the course of the last 18, 20 months in terms of building those clear, trusting relationships with your partners to be able to have the confidence, the trust, and Peter, as you said towards the end there, the confidence to be able to work, and I think that will stand us all in good stead going forward to the future. Unfortunately, we're going to have potentially with the pandemic, it's continuing to be with us in new variants, etc. But I think we all now have trust in ourselves and our abilities, our systems, our processes, and our relationships to be able to work better for the future. I'd like to extend my thanks to Trudy, to Peter, and to Martin for giving up their time this afternoon, for everybody that's joining us today. Thanks to Cavendish, Ben, and the team there. And behind the scenes, I'm going to do a little shout out for a Scottish company called Cameron, who are doing an amazing job in delivering, making all this happen from a technological perspective. Again, things that none of us were really doing much 18 months ago, and for them to be delivering this for Host City across the world is great to see. So thank you very much, and hand back over, I think, to Ben.